Hello again. So welcome to my channel. And now we are going to go on with the North Node series. And we have today North Node in Cancer and South Node in Capricorn to discuss. So with me, we have Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you for being here. So she's a professional astrologer who has the same nodal placement, and we will talk about that. So, welcome, Sarah. Can you introduce yourself for the viewers?
Oh, sure. Yeah, my name is Sarah Borland, and I'm a practicing astrologer. I've actually started studying astrologer in the late 90s. So I've been at this a long time. And yeah, right now I'm actually writing a book on the moon. And it's not necessarily an astrology book, but has a lot of archetypal information about the moon and mothering, nurturance, ancestry. So this is right up my wheelhouse. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, welcome. So I'm so excited about your book as well. So I will be among the first ones to buy your or get your book. So yeah, I also did series on the moon placements for each moon sign. So that was also pretty interesting. So now we are going to talk about the North Node in Cancer. And I'm also not surprised because you have the North Node in Cancer. So moon is your ruler of the North Node. So you are writing a book on the moon. So I'm not surprised. Now I'm not surprised. Okay. So, like when I was studying astrology, I often heard that like this nodal placement is one of the difficult ones. So, South node in Capricorn, North node in Cancer. So, first, do you think that it's a difficult one? So, what makes it different from the others? So, like, how can you like generally summarize the theme of this nodal placement?
Oh, is that to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I wasn't sure how many of us were going to be chatting about this.
Okay.
Um, I think it's, from my own personal experience, what makes this really hard is I know from my experience, I spent much of probably up until my mid 30s really living in the South Node and really struggling to be able to recognize my North Node gifts and even really being able to accept them as part of my personality. So I think that was a really hard piece of it. I was really driven. It was hard work before family, which is really hard for me to say now that I've really more tapped into that piece. But it was really being driven by a lot of duty and responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. We will have the responsibility of Capricorn. So yeah, you mentioned about being stuck in the South Node. So this can happen with the nodal placements, as we know. But you also know that like we cannot really totally abandon our South Node. So we will make use of the qualities of our South Node. It's what we have in the packet. So for that, can you first talk about the advantages and disadvantages of Capricorn South Node? So what can happen if you can use it positively or if you got stuck in it?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's great advantages because, as the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, having a really strong Saturn makes it really easy to manifest in the world. It makes it's kind of one of the best placements if you do want to succeed in in the Western society, because it is very materialistic. It is very much about showing up on time. It's about doing what you're expected to do. And it's very hierarchical. I can't say that word. Hierarchy, right? So it's very top down. And if you kind of know how to play the game, then it is a place where you can succeed. And as we know, the South Node is really the placement where we come, as an evolutionary astrologer, that's where I started. It's really coming into this world with kind of hardwired that these are your strengths. So I think that's why often, not always, but often when we're younger, we really live in that place because it's easy for us. It's a place where we find that we are almost on cruise control. For example, no matter where I was ever shopping, like if I was at the store, whether it's a grocery store or shopping for clothes, hardware store, people would gravitate to me and just ask me for advice or often assume I worked there. So I think there is something about having that managerial quality that just is part of your aura with having a South Node in Capricorn or strong Saturn placements for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. So I totally agree with that. So I think like you kind of in the past lives, especially people believe in that you kind of were successful in the lessons of Saturn. So it's Capricorn South Node. So like you worked hard and like you had success and you had responsibility. And now Cancer indicates that different area of your life. Okay, so then what happens if you got stuck in Capricorn South Node? So what kind of things can people experience?
Yeah. So I think what happens is, I kind of alluded to it, is that you can tend to feel responsible and maybe don't have a really good work family life balance or even a balance about even self-care. And it's a tendency to put others first because again, I think duty reigns over everything. And there is a sense of inflexibility and rigidity that comes with that South Node placement. And I also think that they have a tendency to make things more difficult than they need to be. So I think that that can often be a struggle. It's like, I don't know, in my life, I've always watched other people. And when I struggled, I would be like, well, wait, if I were like, I had a boss, her name was Sandy, and she was my mentor when I was in my 20s. And I would often like ask myself, like, how would she handle this? Sort of like to try on her personality because I know that she lived in a very different way. And sometimes when I would struggle, it would be like, all right, well, if I wasn't me, who else would deal with this and how would they do it? And maybe they would do it an easier way. It still was really hard for me though, but I did make things really, really difficult.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think that has some type of practical problem solving mind. So like how would I handle this? How would I do this? Like this should happen that way. This should happen more structured in this way. So Saturn is also related to structure. So for
Mhm.
that, there is, I believe, the need or the search for a better structure, better let's say plan and so on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you also said that like you were like different in your 20s and 30s, and then you changed, like you kind of had awareness in this axis. So I want to ask you, what made you aware that you got stuck in yourself node? What changed exactly?
Oh, I can't believe you remembered that I said that. That was a while ago. Well, I kind of feel like I have a really great kind of quintessential story, at least my story, for really kind of solidifying that idea of the Capricorn South Node, North Node in Cancer. And of course, mine's on the ascendant descendant axis, 12th house side for North Node. And for those of you that know much about astrology, anything on the angles, the IC, MC, or the ascendant descendant axis, it's when it's conjunct, it's really hard, if not impossible, to move away from. So it's a piece that's really woven into your personality. So what happened for me, and it's really kind of comical, it was I'm trying to, I guess it was my late 30s. I was transitioning, struggling with a career that I chose when I was 16. here's my Capricorn South node. I put the blinders on, make a decision, and I'm a forge ahead. No matter what, I'm going to succeed, no matter how hard the work is, no matter my doubts I might have. It's like single-minded focus. So I did this career for almost 20 years. I was an interior designer and, working for a large architectural firm. And my husband and I decided to move. Well, we moved 2 hours away, but I loved my job, so I still continued to commute. I, this is going to sound terrible. I feel awful saying this, but they're grown and they're healthy adults. But I had two children um, at a very young age, and I commuted 4 hours a day to work because I loved my job, and yet I wasn't in a position financially to quit my job and stay home as a stay-home mom, but I did this really hard commute that was really taxing on the family. So what happened is, and this is really funny, I went to quit my job because it was just untenable. And my husband and I spoke and said, yes, leave, you need to leave your job. We'll find, I'll find something else. So I was sitting in my boss's office, giving my notice, and I'm working at a firm with 40 men and only 3 women. So very patriarchal, very male dominated. And I went to give my notice. And as I'm speaking, the tears just welled up inside of me and came over me like a wave. And that was my first kind of big moment, that it was like my North Node was saying, knock, 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 let me in. My emotions had always been something, I think a lot of it because of when I grew up, but were something to be ashamed of. They didn't belong in the workplace. Vulnerability is never to be exposed. And of course, that's a North Node signature. But having this emotional reaction, I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, and it was hysterical now because this poor man, men are not usually comfortable with emotions, and he pushed himself away from the desk until his chair hit the wall, which was not that far. But he was so visibly like uncomfortable with my emotions. And that was kind of the first thing. Now, fast forward several years, I changed careers. Excuse me. Decided to become a teacher, went back to school, got my master's degree, got all the credentials, got a job. Now I'm sitting in front of teenagers. I taught 8th grade, and I'm sitting in front of teenagers, and something happened on the news, and it was really a big news event. So, we're talking about it, and the kids could see like the tears welling up in my eyes. And at that moment, I had all 30 students glued to me. It was such a moment of authenticity and vulnerability and truth and heart. That was the moment that I finally let go of control, the South Node Capricorn control, and moved into this place of vulnerability for North Node and showing your heartfelt center and your emotions is your gift. But it takes courage with having that South Node in Capricorn. So it was that wild moment that it was like, I got it. Even though I'd been studying astrology and I knew it, it's hard to do if you know it here, but to know it here is a whole nother story. So I hope that helps somebody really like kind of get to the essence of those two, especially if you don't have that placement. But
Yeah,
it's like my superpower now.
yeah, that's an amazing story. So I'm so emotional too with that. So how the students came to you, how you like feel connected to each other. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful story, and two of them as well. So you actually kind of answered another question that I was going to ask about cancer,
Mhm.
emotions,
Mhm.
vulnerability. Um, so for that, as you say, I also think that it will be related to letting go of the control of Saturn and Capricorn, and the desire to control things, to be in control, to be rigid. And it is also about the vulnerable side, asking for help, being vulnerable, crying, and expressing emotions, and so on. So also, like I now think that like you have teachers, like you have students, it is also pretty Cancerian job. So like you nurture them, like you teach them, you like grow them up, like to be adults. So yeah, like no matter what, like so your story, like people might think that, oh, like I have Capricorn staff, no, should I quit my job, should I be stay-at-home parent? No, like you can still work, like you have to work. So it is in you, you have the inner desire to work, but you can maybe find the work or career that is more suitable to your needs and to your maybe maturity or to your expression, exactly like you experienced that, which I'm happy for you. Okay, so for that, cancer, you mentioned briefly, like crying in front of a man, for example, how he pulled himself away. So cancer is also a very feminine side. So, and you said that like there were like 47 men and three women. So we often see that with strong Capricorn women too. So working in men-dominated jobs, and the second to you as well. So for that, with Cancer North Node, and if we think of Cancer, how can someone be more in peace with the feminine side? So this doesn't mean for women, for men as well. So we all have feminine energies. So what helps with that? What do you think?
I think just being really true to yourself and just tapping into what is authentically inside of yourself, because you're right, we do have all of these pieces. And even though, I had that moment of awareness, it's still something I catch myself. I'm not always living my North Node now, right? I'm still trying to find that sweet balance between the two. And sometimes I go crazy control, and then sometimes I'm really more in the flow. But I really think leaning into that vulnerability, and it's especially for men, um, it's that really delicate place that you just kind of dip your toe in. And I would start with somebody safe, right? Somebody who you've got a really established relationship with, that you feel really safe with, that you can just kind of start testing the waters a little bit, because it's not like you're going to rip off the Band-Aid and start wailing in front of somebody, but just kind of trying it out little by little. Um, and then it's the self-care, absolutely self-care. And that's a big piece of North Node in Cancer, is it's like, yes, it's nurturance for others, but probably more importantly, because as a South Node Capricorn, there's lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of sacrifice and putting yourself at the very back of the line, and everybody else gets the nurture, or not the nurturance, gets the care before you and the protection. But North Node, this is the time to really fill your own cup. And so that's also another, I think, really, really good way to start practicing the nurturance and vulnerability, is being that way with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So self-care, as you said, will be pretty important, and like also being emotionally and physically compassionate on yourself. And yeah, as you said, it's not like opening up everything suddenly, rather than gradually as you trust, because Cancer is also a bit careful with trust. So if they trust, they open up. So we often see that with
Mhm.
Cancer placements. And yeah, that's a good advice for people who are going through this nodal axis, especially I think people in their 30s. So I believe in 30s we kind of become aware of who we are. So we become aware of the nodal themes, even though we know astrology or not. So
Mhm.
the themes are present in 30s. Okay, so another theme here with Cancer, of course, motherhood and like motherhood. So, like, how do they stand in relation to the nodes, mother and being a mother, for example, or being a parent?
Um, Not quite sure I understand your question. How does that stand?
Okay, so like when you think of, for example, mother and child relationship, like the
Mhm.
relationship with your own mother. So, what does the North Node tell you about that? First, let's talk about that.
Okay, so I think it really North Node and Cancer. Well, it's hard for me because I'm so tuned to the 12th house, and that's like the prenatal experience. So, for me, I usually look to the moon, and of course, the moon rules
Of
the node.
course.
And this is where sometimes I get struggle because they all start blending together because we're talking about Cancer, the natural ruler of the moon. But certainly, it's it's for me, it was a foregone conclusion that I would become a mother. I didn't even question it. And when I was younger, I really couldn't understand people who chose not to have children just because I was so young and kind of fixed in the way I viewed things. It took me a while to really, and astrology helped that, really helped me understand that everybody thinks about things differently. So, um, and and I think that that's also something that when we think about the North Node in Cancer, is it's really trying to move into what it does mean is to have a feminine side and what it does mean for mothering and feeling comfortable with that because there's still those moments of like it's not like you're going to drop so into motherhood that everything else falls away. There's still a piece, that needs the balance of, your own personal power and that I'm just totally losing myself. All of a sudden I'm picturing motherhood as this self-sacrificial like everything for my children. And there's a piece of that. But then the Capricorn also wants their own autonomy, right? So I think it's always trying to find the balance. But I think that the North Node is so much about fostering other people, whether it's your biological children or your adopted children or just the people you think of in that you kind of want to mother in a way and care for. So it isn't just about motherhood necessarily. I don't know if I answered your question.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much. And you also pointed something really well. So, like, like there is the side of motherhood, like there is the pinky side of motherhood. But motherhood is also okay, emotions, nurturing, feeding, but it's also about structure and discipline. Your mother is your first teacher with this Capricorn South Node. Your mother teaches you how to behave. So Capricorn South Node. So, like, being a mother does not mean that, oh, you can do everything. I will love you unconditionally. So, that has to be boundaries at the same time. So, yeah, you mentioned them as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think about the archetype of the crab, right, for Cancer, and I grew up in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, which is up in the Seattle area. My husband was a fisherman, and we did a lot of crab fishing. So there was a moment where I was standing on a pier, and we had dropped a crab net, and it was a sunny afternoon. You could actually see to the bottom, like it was so perfect and clear. And it was really interesting, knowing all these archetypes, but actually watching how a crab walks and how they approach. They don't walk forward, they walk sideways. And then they're always like, when they got to the crab net, they knew something was there and they kind of reached one of their little legs out and was touching it and feeling it. And so there was a sense of guardedness about new situations and new things. But it was also so interesting that just learning about how the nature of a crab is they have this, it's a crustacean, so it has a hard outer shell, which is very much like Cancer in general and North Node, of course. When you get hurt, there's this tendency to want to hide. So what happens is, like in real life, crabs have a shell, but then they continue to grow. And when they outgrow their shell, they shed it. But while they're waiting for the new one to grow, they're very, very vulnerable to predators. So they bury in the sand. And I've never forgot those metaphors because it's exactly what happens when a cancer gets hurt, they hide. They don't want to be around people. They kind of need to heal themselves and fortress back up. And then they're ready to go back out in the world because they have a really soft underbelly and they're very protective of that. They're also very protective of their brood. We always think of mama bear, but it's almost like mama crab. Like they also can be very protective of the people that they feel are within their circle that they love and adore. So,
Exactly. Exactly. So it's always a better idea to look at the archetype. So we have the crab archetype, as you like told beautifully. So like I also resonate with that. I have Venus in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, Chiron in Cancer. So uh,
oh,
how that feels like to be hurt or hide, kind of.
yes. Yeah, you have to armor up again. It's like
Yeah.
can't do it, can't be around people, gotta hide until I feel strong enough again to take on the world and not get hurt again.
Yeah, definitely. So that will be a good point to understand the cancer nature. Okay, so I'm out of my questions. We have answered like everything that I have in mind. So, do you have anything to discuss on your mind? Any topics that we might have missed or I might have missed? Would you like to?
There's only one thing I just want to throw this out there to kind of dip our toe in the water, so to speak, is, and it's something that I'm exploring even more and trying to lean more deeply into this, is, the concept of belonging, which is a moon concept. So it happens, no matter where your moon placement is, you can look at the sign in the house to talk about, or look at and examine belonging. But how we feel about belonging, whether it's belonging in a family or, maybe if you've got 11th house placements, it could be friendships or whatever. But it's always a dance for me anyway, about, you know, kind of the belonging. It's easy, I think, with the biological family, or I should say, the really like my children. Like I know they belong to me. Like there's a really tight bond there. But um, even in the, what do they call that? The family you were born into?
Yeah,
Like when you were a child and you had your parents, like
yeah,
even
nuclear
that.
family, nuclear
Yeah,
family.
so even that isn't necessarily, I'm a Cancer, but the rest of my family is not, right? Oh, sorry, I identify as a Cancer moon, even though I'm Gemini, but I definitely identify as a Cancer moon. So um, I don't know. I was curious what you thought about that theme of belonging.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't have to be your own family or your own house. So for that, it is where you grow, it is where you feel connected, where you can realize yourself and where you are supported, where you feel the love and nurture, and where you feel security. So it can be, as you said, with 11 hours, it can be with friends, or with 6 hours cancer, it can be in the workplace. So yeah, it can change based on which area. So for that, I often see, for example, people finding home in different countries, expats, for example, who move out of their hometowns, home countries. So, yeah, it is kind of, the word serendipity. So, like looking for something, but you don't know what you are looking for, and you find it. And finally, like you feel the sense of belonging. So it can also be with a person. So I think it's about how you feel supported, how you can realize yourself overall, the sense of belonging.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a perfect
definitely.
point with cancer, the sense of belonging, whether it's physical home, family, or metaphorical. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And then whether another one I was thinking about is and it's kind of where I'm at right now, the ancestry, right? That's connected with, maybe more cancer than necessarily the nodal placement, but I am so driven. Oh, and this is interesting because this, I didn't really think about it. This kind of segues off belonging. As somebody who's grown up in, when I was a kid, I would always ask my dad, like, well, what are we? And my dad would joke, I don't know how many of you are from the US, but there's Heinz ketchup, which
Uh-huh.
it says it's made from like 57 different varieties of tomatoes. And so he would always joke and say, well, you're just like Heinz ketchup. Like you have all these different pieces and parts. Um, and I have recently really connected. I was really, really close with my grandmother, more close with my grandmother growing up than my mother. And it never even crossed my mind that she was 100% Finnish. And it just recently, I've kind of gotten the bug and I'm really diving in really deep to the ancestral piece. And again, that's belonging, right? Where do you belong? Because I've never felt like we didn't have any traditions. It was like I was always jealous of like my friends who were Italian and they would do certain things on the holidays and have these big family gatherings and it was something that just wasn't a part of what I grew up with. And so it always made me a little misty-eyed and, wishing that I had a family that did these really fun things and again, very familial. So, I'm just kind of trying to fill in the blanks now in terms of like, where do I belong? Where do I fit? And I'm actually very specifically following only my maternal line. So everybody's like, well, what about your father? And what about that side? And I'm like, it's only about my grandma and her line. So, so that part I also find very fascinating with that Cancer North Node is for me, again, it's that drive to really figure out like where I belong and who do I belong to and what are the traditions and the customs that I don't know how many of you know this, but at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, when there was this big wave of immigration to the United States, there was such a drive to belong and to become American that families were encouraging their children to not speak their native tongue. They were going to schools where everybody spoke English. And English, of course, was the bridge language. But there was, you know, as a teacher, I heard the stories. I was a history teacher. So I heard the stories of all of these families. It didn't matter where they came from. It was at that particular time period, it was like, become American as quickly as possible, lose your accent, lose your culture. You just wanted to be just like all the other kids in school. And so, as a result of that, so I think there's a lot of us who are just feeling like, we don't have any groundedness, we don't have any roots. And so, trying to recapture like at least some part of that.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm so amazed with that as well. Yeah, I remember from my American history class, Naturalization Act of 1905 or something like that. So I remember that now.
Hmm.
So ancestors, like of course, like it is also something interesting that you said. And last week I also recorded Black Monolith in Cancer. So there were
Mm.
people Black Monolith in Cancer placement. So they were also pretty close with their grandmothers. So I think it might be something common with cancer placements. On top
Yeah.
of that, like in the earlier we said that like it's maybe not about your biological mother, so it can be your mother figure. So like your
Hmm.
grandmother was your mother figure. Your with your grandmother you had a sense of belonging. So maybe with your grandmother you felt like yourself. You expressed your true self. So that's
Hmm.
why you felt belong to her. And
Yeah.
uh, yeah, definitely. So I think like cancer is also connected to ancestors. So for that, it is something really maybe evolutionary to do something like that. So with cancer, not.
Hmm.
This is what I think. Okay. So any other things to discuss? Anything on your mind? Would you like to
I
say?
think the only other thing is just kind of going to the base, the elemental of again North Node, South or North Node Cancer, which is a water sign,
Uh-huh.
right? It's very empathetic, right? There's an intuition, and that's another thing as you were talking about, like with men, it's dropping into your intuition and trusting your instincts about, when to move forward on things and when not to. I met a man, a younger man. He was probably about your age, and I was so impressed with him. He was had such a balance of his masculinity with his feminine nature that it was such a treat and such a pleasure to meet with him and to talk with him, and he just softened right up. I was in a workshop, so he softened right up and was talking with the group. And it was like I could see almost, well, it's interesting. I'm having this thought. He's a Gemini, but I could see both feminine and masculine standing equally. They were the same height, standing on the same footing, and they were absolutely balanced within him. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what all men need need to have is, and all women too. We need to have this complete balance, and then knowing when to like move in and back and forth so that we can, especially when we think about partnerships, when we can really like support each other, right? Is we're going to have this kind of flow between the masculine and the feminine, or the yin and the yang, however you want to think about it. But yeah, it was just so the empathy is a piece that, and the intuition, right? Leaning into that, I think is key to success.
Yeah, definitely being in tune with that, having like also Capricorn Cancer, like structure and rules and emotions, vulnerability. So I think it also asks for that balance in a way. So yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
advice. I think people will find lots of insight in that.
Hmm. Yeah, I also, what you just said reminds me of that. It's a metaphor of having oh, this sounds terrible. It's very Saturn, like an iron fist inside a velvet glove. And it's kind of like that structure, right, of Capricorn, which is like, this is the way it is, right? They're very like, this is it. But then the Cancer is like the velvet glove. It softens it. So it's being able to have the best of both, I think. If you can work both sides, it's like but it's not easy. It
Yeah, it's not
takes a
easy.
lifetime. For sure.
Perfect. But yeah, at least it is kind of continuous growth. Okay. So thank you so much, Sarah. It has been an amazing discussion. So I believe that participants have found lots of things, lots of insights. So now I want to have their opinion, have their questions if they have any. So if
Yeah.
anybody wants to speak, you can join us. So any comments, any questions, or any stories that you want to
Oh,
share,
yeah.
you are welcome. So be vulnerable, don't be afraid.
Well,
Yeah.
hi.
I,
Hi, I'm Joanna. Well, I totally agree with Sarah in many things regarding to the North Cancer. Um, in Cancer, I mean, but I never felt this kind of feeling that she described. For example, that when she heard the North Cancer talking to her, or feeling that this is the North Cancer. I never have defined this. Maybe because my moon is in the 12th house. I don't know if that or not, but I am in general, I am struggling with my to identify my emotions. Um, and but with a lot of situations that she described was in my life, at least, have been in the same way, with this kind of disbalance when I am putting my energy in the family situations, or situations where I have to to do this kind of maternity, but not just with kids, because in my case I haven't kids, but and even when I am trying to have kids, I have found a lot of problems with that. But in different occasions, as family situations, or with my dogs, or when I was, for example, looking for a child, uh, all my situations with the work are totally like we in disbalance, in unbalance. So this kind of things I felt the same. And with my mom, for example, I feel like a feeling that I am the mother of her. But it's not something that she's like that, or she's trying to do with me or with my sister. It's something like a unconscious between us, between her and me. And I know that right now, and I have been doing some kind work with familiar constellations about it. And so I am totally conscious about it, but it's something like I cannot manage. Is that I feel like I need to sort things for her, or if I don't want it, the life looks like the life is asking me for it. So I don't know. It things that I feel. I don't know. I think that it is related to the Cancer North in my case. And with the South North, for me, this kind of responsibility situations, or responsibilities in my work, for example, always these kind of situations comes to me like easily. uh, Even if I don't trying to do something, forget profile of responsibility in my job, they always call me, or I don't know, the life brings these kind of situations and looks like that it was there for me. But I don't know as well, what about, and this is a question for you, Matt, what about with the planets that are in conjunction with the South North? Because for me, for example, I found very difficult with my South North my Venus, for example. My Venus is in totally conjunction with the South North. And despite that the Venus is in Capricorn, I am ascendant Capricorn, by my Saturn is in Libra. So I totally understand that my Saturn and my Venus, they work together. I don't know how, but they work together. Even I have this kind of quadrature, red line between Saturn and Venus, but this is not struggling for me. The struggling for me are the relationships with when I have been in relationships, because this kind of unbalance that I was describing before in my relationship are more clear. So and even for do sum up of my let's say romantic relationships, I always had been the mother for them, or they don't have mother because they lost her mothers at the beginning of the life, or because they have problems with the mothers, with him their mothers. I always in this kind of relationship, if I don't, even when I don't want it, but came to I mean these kind of situations, I don't know how to say sorry, became in situations where I am the mother for them. So for me as a ascendant Capricorn, I think even with my Venus in Capricorn, I don't feel comfortable with that. Even when I is easy for me. But for me, it's like no. I want that something take care of these things, because I need to be focused, for example, in my work or things like that. Because as I said before, I always had been working in profiles with a lot of responsibility, and I need to put a lot of energy there. So when this kind of situation, familiar situations or situation of relationships, the things are totally on unbalance. I don't know how to say.
Okay, thank you so much. You basically summarized the struggle of this nodal axis. First, for that, like we said, mothers or mothering. So yeah, you might also experience that in life. Maybe as it is the North Node, it might be some type of challenge to push you forward, like you have to mother others, but maybe you don't nurture yourself, maybe, or maybe like you it can be also about, as Sarah discussed, self-care, self-compassion. So that might be reflection of it. So now I can think about that way. And at the same time, here we have the boundaries of Saturn. So like, okay, you can mother somebody, you can help them, you can guide them, but to what extent? So like there should be some stop line, so some red line, let's say. And yeah, it can also be related to the empathy of Cancer, so that you might feel responsible. And as you said, in your relationship with your mother as well, you know that you are not responsible, but you feel responsible. So it can be related to empathy. So in that case, it will be important to distinguish your emotions from other people's emotions. So like you might act basic maybe on how you feel. So not thinking that how she feels if I do that. So how you feel when you do something. So that can maybe guide you basically. So for the question of the South Node, so planets conjunct South Node can be a bit difficult at first because planets or angles conjunct South Node make the energy a bit intense. So it might be a bit easier to be stuck in that energy. So now that you also have Venus in Capricorn and South Node in Capricorn, so in my own practice, I often see that like Venus in Capricorn people sometimes might struggle with some self-care or self-spoilment, let's say. So like or self-emotional care, or like they might feel like they have to work always. So this can kind of intensify the theme of responsibility. So for that, you might be forgetting about your own needs. So, and make as that you are ignoring your own needs, life might put other people in front of you. Okay, deal with them. You are not dealing with yourself, now deal with them. So it can be about that. That's it's how I feel right now.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome. And Sarah, what would you like to add, or would you like to say anything?
Yeah, it was interesting because I was wondering, you sort of really lit up when you started talking about the ancestry piece. And, it's really hard to talk about these things in isolation because, even though I feel like I've really made a lot of progress in really grasping like my North Node in Cancer, I have such a difficulty crying. Like it really takes a lot. And I often feel, I mean, it's not that I don't, and I do feel a lot, but my natural moon is in Gemini. So I often wonder if I'm just so quick to move off my feelings that makes it more difficult for me to stay in a situation and really feel through it because that Mercury just wants me to move on to something else. But I actually have several movies on um like that I keep that if I really need a big emotional release, I will watch, like I'll call it a 5 box tissue movie because it will be like I'll be crying through like the whole thing. But I need big triggers. So I think sometimes we think that with the nodal axis, like if we're not like we can be emotional, but that doesn't mean we're necessarily crying, right? And we still have to think about the rest of the chart. Um, and I feel like mine's an extra big challenge because I have an air sun and an air moon. So it's really hard for me to connect with that energy, but it's not impossible, right? But it's like there are moments when I'm there, and then there are moments when I'm over here and moments when I'm elsewhere. So we just have all of these different parts of ourselves, and which one at that particular moment is taking center stage. And then maybe it drops back, then something else steps forward. So there's so many different aspects to who we are. We're just such complex beings.
Exactly. We are like Heinz ketchup.
Yes.
Exactly.
So there isn't a perfect way to do it. It's just, just keep moving forward and just discover and unpack it. And that's the fun, I think. The fun of being human.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much, Joanna, for your insight. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? Anything to say? Anything to add? Uh, yeah.
Hello, my name is Rizi. I'm 23 years old. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Joanna. I also have my North Node in Cancer. For 4 years now, I'm a self-taught astrologer. I like to say that, but I don't know if it's really like that. Like if I really can call myself an astrologer because I don't have like these structural things for it to call myself an astrologer. It's so important, I think, with Cancer North Node that you allow your soul to soften. But yeah, Sarah already summed everything up perfectly. But I like to add that with herbs you can do that as well. With lunar or herbs like mugwort or jasmine, to work with the specific areas you have your moon at, like specific houses you have your moon at, a specific house. sorry, you have your moon at. I'm kind of excited right now. And where a specific house you have Cancer at, like to allow that area of life and at the same time the area of your body to soften up. For example, maybe with the coconut oil or something like that. I think it is directly connected to like the physical meaning of the North Node in Cancer is directly connected to the spiritual meaning of North Node in Cancer. And the example with the crab, I directly thought about animal life. Oh, I do always put the specific animal in the first house, like in the as the ascendant. For example, when the crab would be Cancer ascendant. So in the 7th house, it would have Capricorn. So it makes a lot of sense that it has an outer shell where it has a border to the outside world with the 7th house in Capricorn. I don't know if that made sense a little bit. Yeah. Also, it's okay to be in illusions sometimes with the Cancer North. I also have my moon in the 12th house as Joanna. So I understand that. Joanna, do you have your moon in Sagittarius or?
Yeah, that's right. In conjunction, even in the same grade of Neptune. So yeah, so for me it's especially difficult to feel identified with a Sagittarius moon when I read about that, of course. But I travel a lot because my work, for example, not because I want. Or because I decide like all the time, if I have a problem, I want to go to travel. No, 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 it's my case. But sometimes I mean, the traveling for work is something that is often is happen to me all the time. But when I read about Pisces moon, for example, that's me. That's me totally. So I feel like I'm more identified with Pisces moon.
Yeah,
Of
for
course.
probably for that Neptune conjunction. Yeah.
And for me it's easy cry. No in situations of my work, because seriously in my work, even the people who work with me, they can describe me more like a Capricorn person. I totally sure about it. But with my family or friends or dogs, oh my God, dogs, I want to adopt all of them. But yeah, this kind of situations are usual for me.
Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much. So again, like we see nurturing pets, love of pets, dogs, cats, with Cancer North Node. So it's amazing that you have you have this love for dogs. Okay, so yeah, Emily.
Yeah.
Can I quickly add something? I wanted to say it's so important, like the relationship with authorities with the Cancer North Node. I like experienced so much bad moments with authorities all my life. It's so hard um, to deal with them with the Cancer North Node and Capricorn South Node. Like our soul already knows how it is to be the master. I think our soul already knows how it is to be like up and in the ladder, on the ladder, or up in the hierarchy. It's yeah, like sometimes we need to be in that down position, or in that I don't know how to call it. It's kind of hard to say it. And Saturn, I think growing up, like growing up as an adult, is so hard with the Capricorn South Node, because you always, no matter which Saturn you have, no matter which South Node you have, you always, as you grow older, go to your Saturn energies. It's like the rule of nature. But with the Capricorn South Node and Cancer North Node, it's kind of hard to not get too much into the Saturn energies as you grow older. So I think it's hard to grow up as an adult, or like get older with a Cancer North Node, because people see you as childish sometimes, maybe because, like, for example, my moon in Leo, I think people kind of sometimes see me as like funny or childish, or I don't know. It's yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Emreezy. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. It has been an amazing discussion. So, with Sarah, first of all, thank you so much. Like, you have shared lots of beautiful insights, stories, and thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Johanna and Emrizi. So your input is pretty valuable. And I think people who watch this video will get lots of insights from this. And that's why we are doing these things. Okay. So, thank you so much, everybody. So this is the end of the recording, end of the video. So if you like these videos, please stay tuned and subscribe to my channel. See you next time. Take care and goodbye.